Alright, what we're going to do is a couple of simple scripts from chapter 1 that gets us started, shows us exactly what we're going to be doing for the rest of the semester, and talks a little bit about JavaScript as we go along. So what I have set up here is I have a browser. I'm using Chrome here, and then what I'm going to do my work in, I'm going to use Notepad++. There are lots of options for editors you can use, some listed in the book and some listed in the learning module. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up a very basic HTML page. So I'm going to set up the head section, and going to go ahead, close the head section. We're going to open up the body tag. We're not going to have anything in it yet, and then we're going to close the body tag, close the HTML tag. So if this is all foreign to you or you need a refresher, highly recommend that you go back through some of the tutorials or the refresher courses I have on HTML. As the course goes on, you won't write a lot of HTML if you need forms and things like that. In many cases, I'll provide those for you. But you do need to understand the basics of HTML. So be sure and review that as needed. So what we're going to do is we're just going to demonstrate how the browser comes through and it renders the HTML until it sees an opening script tag, and then everything between the opening and closing script tag is going to then be interpreted. The JavaScript between those is going to be interpreted, and the results or input or output or whatever it is your program does will show up here. Starting out, we will have our JavaScript run as it is encountered, and that's what this script will show you, but it'll load the HTML page, it'll execute the script, it'll do more HTML, execute more script until we go on. We can control when that script runs later on using functions and event handlers, but that's a little bit down the road. So let's get started. Inside our script tag, we're going to write our first line of JavaScript, and I'm going to throw out a couple of words here. You might not understand them yet, but they'll get explained a little bit in future chapters. But I do want to point out a couple of things as I type this. First of all, JavaScript is case sensitive. So if you type alert with a capital A when it's supposed to be a lowercase a, you're going to get errors. So our first line of code is going to be alert. This is a method of the window. We don't really write window. You can, it's optional, but what an alert will do is it'll tell the browser to put a pop-up window up, and whatever we put inside the parentheses, which are known as the parameters of the method, if we put text in quotes, then our pop-up window will then show us the text that we have. So in this case, all this thing is going to do is going to load a blank HTML page with the title of Welcome to JavaScript filled out. It'll hit that script tag. A pop-up window will come up. The only option on there will be the text that we put hello world and an OK button. And the script will not run or continue to run until the OK button is clicked. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to use File Save As. I'm going to save it to my folder here, first script. This is an HTML file, so I'm going to put a .html extension on it. And then I'm going to flip on over to my browser. I'm going to hit a Control-O for open, or if you want to go to your file manager, you can do it that way. But what you want to do is find your script, double click on it, and then here is our page, Welcome to JavaScript. That's where the title from the HTML tags end up. This is the output of our alerts. The pop-up window comes up with our text that we put in the parameters, and then the OK button. And so that right there is our first script. It's not very impressive, but we're going to add to that somewhat. We're going to do some other things. I'm going to then put in some HTML. Oops, let's make that an H1 actually. So this is just going to show a heading that says this is some text. And I'm just going to do this so you can show how the text and the HTML can be intermixed. So I open the script tag up. Now I have to talk about just for a minute about this closing script tag. This is one you cannot leave off. If you forget to close your script tag, the browser is still in JavaScript mode, so any HTML that would show up after that, it's going to try to interpret that as JavaScript, and of course it's going to fail because it's not written in the correct format, and so you'll get syntax errors. So for example, if we had forgotten this closing script tag right now, it would have tried to run the command alert and the hello world, and that would have looked at this H1 right here and tried to interpret that as JavaScript, which it is not, and so it would have, our program would have bonked right there. So it's very important that you close the script tag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show one of the more another common way to put output onto the page. I'm going to use the document.write method, and again inside of the parentheses of that method we can feed it text inside double quotes. This is the document. Oops. Document. Alright, actually I don't need to separate that out since it's in parentheses. And notice also I'm going to end my lines of code with a semicolon, and it's good to get in the habit of doing this. JavaScript is actually pretty loosey-goosey compared to a lot of your compiled programs, and so there are many times when you can leave this off, but then there are always those times where you need it for some reason or another, and if you don't put it, it doesn't work. So it's always a good idea to get in the habit of putting the semicolon in, and only in the cases when you don't need the semicolon to leave that out. And so that right there is a another output way, and what it'll do is it'll actually go and write, which is the method, whatever's in the parentheses, to the document that is there. I'm also going to add one more line of code just to show you how you can change a property of a document. This is from an example in your book as well. And so what we can do is we can say document.bgcolor, which is a property that you can either retrieve data from. You could say the background is currently, and retrieve the word purple or whatever from that. Or we can set it equal to something, and on the fly, the browser will change the property background color of the current document from what it is to what you set it to be. So let's go ahead and save this and go back to our document, and because it's already loaded in the browser, I can hit the reload button and actually have the browser load the document again. So there's our first alert that says hello world. We click OK. Here's our H1, that is just regular HTML saying this is some text. This is the text that is written as a result of the document.write right here. And then sure enough, it changed the background color of our page from white to pink. So that's our first script. It's not the most useful script in the world, but it does show us a couple of important things to note. We will use the alert quite a bit, particularly in the first examples of the class. Document.write is always a good way to get some text or some output out to your user. And then we have an example of how we've used a method of, a property of the object document to change one of the properties. And so we'll do that quite a bit as we move on through the examples. So that is the end of your first demo video.